So hi everyone, and welcome to our 12th YPIC webinar, Tweetomics and Instacademia, how to use social media in science with Ben Garcia. Thank you very much for being here, and let me quickly introduce Ben a bit. So he was professor at the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine until 2021, and then he moved to the Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis. And there he works as professor and is also head of the Department of Biochemistry and Molecular Biophysics. Ben has also been recognized with many awards, for example, from the ASMS Beeman Medal and also the HUPO Discovery in Proteomic Science Award. In his position, he's quite active to promote diversity and inclusion, and is also involved in earlier career researchers. Where he is also quite active is on Twitter, and this fits perfectly for our topic today. And before we will start with these topics, just quickly some advertisement. If you want to know more about YPIC, please have a look on Twitter, Facebook, our website, on LinkedIn or on Mastodon. We are also there now. And also don't forget to hand in your thesis or whatever to the YPA for the YPA award. The application deadline is extended until the end of the next week, and the award will be handed out in Newcastle at the YPA conference in July. Then also don't miss the Students Exchange event that takes place in April this year. And that is an online event that will help you to get in contact with other students in different labs, to connect and learn also new techniques. If you are interested in that, there will be some more information soon on our social media accounts. Before we will listen now to the talk from Ben, some more information how this will go on. So if you have any questions, please provide them or send them to the account that is called Questions with the YPA webinar logo on, and he will send them to me in the end, and I will ask them at the end of the talk from Ben. And I think now we are all very excited to listen to your talk. Ben, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you, Louisa, for a very kind introduction, and also for the invitation to share a little bit about my experiences kind of using social media, mostly Twitter, but a few of the other ones as well. I am going to turn off my video just because I do have sometimes some internet problems, so I'm going to turn that off just to hopefully avoid any of that. And let me share my presentation. Okay, can everybody kind of see that in, I guess, presentation mode? Does it look okay?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. Great. Okay. And so, yes, as Luisa kind of mentioned, my name is Ben Garcia, and I've been a professor having my own independent lab for the last 15 years. And what I've seen over time is that, social media has really taken off in academia. Obviously, in our personal lives, a lot of people are on, different platforms, social media, to talk with friends and share news and share pictures and things like that. But over the last decade, I've seen a really big change in the use of social media for, companies that are recruiting, for, getting scientific information out in the public, having scientific discussions and discourse of many different types. And although I was very hesitant to get on social media, it's not something I've done in my personal life, to be honest. My lab was, for the last several years, really kind of pushing me to get the lab on social media or get on social media, because they had told me how useful it can be for an academic. for scientists, especially in academia, but across any areas, not just academia. And so I will tell you a little bit about, my experiences and just kind of some of the social media for academia specifically that I use. You know, there's one or two that I use more than others, and kind of what are the advantages, disadvantages of some of these, how you can use those to, for your, build your career. And so I think, in looking at academic social media, the goal is really to, manyfold, right? And so to promote scientific research, highlight your publications and achievements, also seek information, feedback, potentially collaborations. I've seen a lot of these things just start organically from, tweets and from, just people asking a scientific question. I think it's a great way to network, especially around the world. Oftentimes the best way in the past was really just to go to conferences, right, and meet people. And I still think that's probably the best way to really build strong relationships. But can't go to every conference. And even when you go to a conference, you're not going to meet everyone or meet even half the people that are at the conference probably. And so social media kind of plays a nice little role there to get you to network and have conversations with people that you would otherwise would never probably meet because of either geographical constraints or for other reasons. And that will always lead to, creating, friendships, networks, potentially mentoring, support type of opportunities for all researchers. And so I think these are all things that can happen with the good use of social media. And so, as I mentioned, there's a lot of social media. I'm not on everything. So I don't use Facebook. I don't use Instagram or Snapchat or any of those things. I kind of stick with the social media that's a little bit more tried and true. And so these are 4 social media platforms that I think are pretty important. Probably what I would say would be like the core social media platforms for an academic to probably use. There's 1 or 2 more, but I think these are the ones I think are pretty important. And I just wanted to give the citation to this website because they created this, and I think it's really great. So what you're seeing here is just a table of what the 4 main, actually, these are the ones I use. So it's kind of convenient that the ones that the social media platforms that I use were kind of listed here. They do talk about a couple other ones as well. So, Google Scholar, LinkedIn, ResearchGate, and Twitter. And some of these I use pretty heavily. Some I don't really use, or I just have profiles. But as you can see here, there's advantages and disadvantages to each one, depending on what you want to do, right? Do you want to have a platform where you're conversing with people, or do you just want to get your work out there? Some are better than others, for sure. And so Google Scholar, I think personally, I think every scientist should have a Google Scholar platform because I think it's very important to, be able to have some types of metrics of what you've been up to and a way to list all of your publications. These aren't perfect, so it's not like citations and the scoring indexes are the best measure of productivity or impact, but I think it's nice to have these all kind of concisely put on a single page. And so if you look at Google Scholar, you can add you can't really add a bio, just kind of basically your name. You can add a picture. It's really strong for listing all of your publications, and it will do it automatically. So that's kind of like really, really nice. It doesn't quite have like the link to all of your, to the full text of your publications. There might be some that might be indexed and linked like that. So, if you want to have full links to your publications, that's a different platform, which I'll show you in a second. it's not one of these networking type of platforms. So it's not really a place to connect with other people. And it's not like Twitter or LinkedIn where you can like follow people and see what they're doing. But the reason I like it is because it's basically fully automated. So once you set it up, it will continuously be automated with any of updates in your publications. And I'll show you kind of what mine looks like. And so because of that, there's, really no work you have to do other than really set it up, which is kind of nice. And so here's my Google Scholar page. For some reason, it still has my old institution, but that's okay. Basically, we'll list all of your publications. So I just cut it off, but it has, a list of everything, year it was published, how many times it was cited, which is actually kind of nice to look at, right? Sometimes you think, oh, I published a paper and it's not one of my most important papers. But then when you go to look to see how much it's cited, it's like, oh, wow, people really like that paper. And so that's kind of nice. And obviously it's going to keep, track of this automatically. So you don't have to do anything. There's these indexes here, the H index and the I-10 index, which basically kind of give a measure of, how many citations you have and how well they're, being used as well. And so, this is kind of nice to see how that is. And, you can kind of look at other scientists and kind of compare. But at the end of the day, I just like this because it has a place where you can where it would automatically kind of put all of your publications. And, one thing that is kind of important for those that are wanting to stay in academia, oftentimes, it will come up, your Google Scholar page or your H index, you might get asked that. Some people might ask you like, oh yeah, what does that kind of look like? And, what's your most cited paper? Well, now you can easily find that type of information. And so, yes, I think for just automatic kind of keeping of your papers and things, that's the best way to go, the Google Scholar. And there's other websites that can do that as well, but I think Google Scholars is pretty easy to use and set up, and you don't really have to think about it anymore. One of the platforms that a lot of people use in science, especially in industry, is LinkedIn. And so I have to admit that I don't use it that often. I do have a page, but I rarely go on because I think it is more useful for industry. And I'll kind of explain that in a second. But, comparing to Google Scholar, you can put your biography, customize it, all that's fine. You can display as many pubs as you want, but you have to manually put them in. So that's kind of the trade-off. And you can add links with, the full text of your publications as well. So that's good. But it's all, it's not automated. You have to do it yourself. It is a good way to connect with other people. And so it's incredibly well adopted and widespread around the world, especially industry. And so I don't know of any companies, very few people that are in industry, especially at higher level positions, that do not have like a LinkedIn or use LinkedIn in some way. And HR departments and industry use LinkedIn quite a bit as well. It is very good for kind of networking, kind of seeing what other people are up to, getting news. You will get updated in the timeline with notifications, scientific, job opportunities, ways to improve your skill sets through, different types of training, things like that. You can share anything you pretty much want. So, although it mostly tends to be kind of, geared towards science, industry, some academia, you can share other things as well. So it has a little bit of a feel of Facebook as well. I've seen people share articles and pictures and things like that are even a little bit more on the personal side. That's fine too. In terms of kind of connecting with people, you can, but it's only through a direct message. And so Google Scholar definitely has no way to interact with people. In LinkedIn, you can definitely specifically ask questions and follow people, things like that. The nice thing about LinkedIn is that it is pretty easy to use, and once you kind of set it up, you really don't have to do too much. Although, as I'll mention, no matter what platform you use for social media, you should kind of use it minimally, I would say, to get the most out of it. And so, there will be, you should be doing some posts, and you should be kind of looking at things and interacting with people. But, if you want to set it up and just kind of see what happens, that's fine too. And so I do have a LinkedIn. I have to admit, it's not very good. I probably need to update it a little bit more. I had one before that was much better, but something got screwed up, and I had to start all over, and I've been just lazy to get it going. And as I mentioned before, it's probably, for me, it's not as useful as like Twitter or other things, but in industry, it's heavily used. So I think for all the students, trainees, scientists, if a position in industry is your goal, you absolutely, I think, need a LinkedIn. And so, and the reason I say that is because LinkedIn kind of acts as your CV in a way. And so this is actually a better page. This is one of my postdocs here at Washington University, but Libby is interested in an industry position. And so, if you look at the, if I would scroll down on her LinkedIn page, it lists experience and education, just like a CV would. You can put all kinds of different skills that you have as well. So, it very much kind of reads like a CV. And then, like I said before, you can put in your publications as well, and with links to them. So it pretty much acts like you putting out your CV out there. And, the one thing I know is that several people who are recruiting for industry, whether they're like HR, whether they're like headhunters, whether they're, just people that are posting directly, oftentimes will definitely look at their networks and reach out specifically to you on LinkedIn to see if you might be interested in opportunity. And I know this because several of my people have been, approached this way, and some people have left my lab because they've been, given a great opportunity that they couldn't refuse. And so it is a very active platform in industry where you could easily be, receiving information, offers, things like that on your next positions. The nice thing about it too is just I really like the format. So sorry, it's kind of hard to tell with this. I didn't want to go live and keep switching back and forth, but you'll get a timeline and you'll get updates. And so you'll often see things that are either from your networks or people with like similar kind of, their algorithm will kind of match you with like similar types of interests. And so for this one, here there's a advertisement that came up on this morning on my LinkedIn that was basically advertising for US HUPO, so the United States Human Proteome Organization, and specifically, kind of targeting, trainees. If you want to hear about like certain companies and labs that are going to be recruiting, well, there's going to be an event at US HUPO, and as well as, if you're recruiting your company or lab, you can kind of try to also register to recruit as well. So you'll see a lot of these opportunities like that. But once you have your LinkedIn, don't be surprised if you get directly contacted by someone who is looking to fill a position. I've heard this so many different times from people. LinkedIn is a great way to kind of maintain industry ties and hear about all the newest trends in industry, specifically, and also get recruited as well. And so the next social media platform that I use a little bit is ResearchGate, and I probably need to do a better job of this one as well. So Google Scholar, Twitter are probably the ones I use the most, but these two are very useful. I just probably need to use them a little bit better. And so again, just kind of going through the strengths and weaknesses of the different platforms. And so you can create your profiles. That's fine. but there is kind of limitations. So it doesn't really let you kind of put a lot of information about yourself, really. Basically, you just add projects and publications. So it's just very much highlighting your science. And it's very easy to use. You can kind of put in as much as you want. It will kind of give you an opportunity to feature like 5 of your top publications. After that, you have to enter them in. And so, you have a lot of publications. It's a little bit of work that you have to do kind of manually. This is probably the best platform, though, for having like full text links of your publications. And so there's very, very easy way to do this. Many times it's automatically done. It'll kind of just search to find the link that you, to a paper that you put. So this is really nice to really, put your papers out there and make them in a accessible manner so that people can kind of look and see what you're doing and read about it, not just see the titles. And so a lot of people use this. It's quite well, adopted. There's really not a lot of connection though. So unlike LinkedIn, where you can follow people and really kind of interact and directly message people or things like that, or tag people, stuff like that. This one is not that. This is really just for kind of putting out your publications. But you can follow people and you can see updates on what they're working on. So if there's labs, if there's scientists that you're really interested in, you can definitely, kind of get notified about their newest papers and things like that. And so there is a way to like kind of ask questions, but it's not really great. I don't think a lot of people spend a lot of time on ResearchGate. It's mostly just an avenue to really kind of put your work out there and, have these full text links. And it doesn't require a whole lot, to be honest. I think once you set it up and you put on as little or as much of your publications as possible, then it's really not, a lot of work. And so I do have a ResearchGate, probably need to update it more because I only have 4 publications, and I have a few more than that. And then, kind of keeps a score of how many people are kind of reading your publications and things like that. But what I really like about it is that depending on like your areas and your institutions and your networks, you will get like updates on other people's work. So I kind of like that. And so this, Tim Lohman is a faculty in my department. And so he's on there. So, whenever he publishes a new paper, it kind of comes up and I can kind of see it. So I kind of like that. I like the notifications. I like kind of seeing what's new without having doing like a PubMed search. If you have some of your favorite scientists or favorite areas that you're interested in, you can kind of get automatically notified and have links to like the full publications and look at figures and things like that. So that's actually kind of useful. And so lastly, I'll probably spend, most of the time talking about Twitter. That's probably the social media platform I'm most active on, probably too active sometimes. And so Twitter is I think, probably the most useful tool for interactions. And so, you can put your bio, you can add pictures, customize it, to a certain extent, enough for people to, really know who you are. This is not really a great place to kind of have an archive of your publications. You could definitely, announce a paper, here and there, that you get published, but it's nowhere close to like Google Scholar or ResearchGate for like a nice online presence, for your publications and your work. But you can announce things and you can add like the links. And so at least for a split second, you can definitely get feedback and interactions about your newest papers. But soon they will be lost in the tweets. And so that's why it's not really a great indexing platform for your publications like ResearchGate is. In terms of interactions with other people, both in your field, out of your field, not even in science, this is obviously for those of you who are on Twitter, you know, this is the absolute best platform for this. Very easy to follow anybody, you know, very easy to get information on timelines. You can use hashtags if there's like certain things you want to look for, you know, if you want to just put hashtag proteomics or hashtag mass spec, you'll see all the, you know, in search, you'll see all the tweets that people have put hashtags on. So that's really useful to kind of parse through a lot of the information that we'll get on there. Best, probably, I think it's the best platform for really sharing news because a lot of people see it in a very short amount of time. You can have a lot of interactions, both direct with people, public, you know, obviously tweeting back and forth, retweeting, things like that. But you can also direct message people as well if you have some things that you want to talk about in private. So it's really versatile in terms of the interactions. In terms of maintenance, there's really not any. You know, you can set up your Twitter account and then just kind of follow people and just kind of observe and read. And you don't really have to interact with anybody at all. You know, there's a lot of people that are on Twitter and they just like to see what other people are saying or you know, see different conversations, but not really engaged. That's totally fine. But I think to get the most out of Twitter, you should try to really either, you know, respond to people or tweet, you know, every so often, because I think that will show people that you're interested in things that they're interested in and things they're saying. It'll help build your networks as well. And so, you know, and I've had a lot of really great interactions with all kinds of different people that I don't think I'd ever have a chance to meet. So it's really something where like you don't need a lot of maintenance, but to get the most out of it, you do have to be a little bit active. And so, as I said before, Twitter, you know, put in your picture, profile, banner page, a little bit about yourself here. It's a little limited, doesn't let you put like, you know, a huge bio, but just a couple sentences or so. But there's a lot of great things about Twitter. And I think one is just, you know, for announcing things. And so for any types of announcements that you're interested in. And so, like I said before, I wasn't really wanting to go on Twitter, kind of resisted it for a long time. And I think because the pandemic hit, so this was kind of like February, March of 2020, after, you know, getting a lot of badgering from my lab, I finally just said, well, you know what, right now it looks like the world is shutting down. I don't know when we're going to get back to normal. Maybe it's not a bad idea to start a Twitter, and maybe this will keep me connected with people. And so it was really great for that, for the pandemic. I think it really had a lot of, I think science communities really grew a lot during the pandemic and saw a lot of interactions, and they've kind of continued. Twitter's been a little bit weird lately with Elon Musk taking over, but I think it's settling down a bit. But what I found with Twitter is, you know, just a really great proteomics, mass spec community, and you know, one where there's a lot of feedback and engagement. And so I'll just show you a little bit of how I'm using Twitter, or how I've used Twitter, and, you know, kind of just the responses and what you can kind of expect. And so Twitter is great for any types of announcements. And so here I kind of announced, I guess about a year ago or something, a couple of years ago, that my department, so I'm, as Luisa had mentioned in the introduction, I am now a department head, have been for the last year and a half. So, you know, we're developing a lot of programs and things and having recruitments to our department as well. And so I've enjoyed using Twitter as a medium to let the world know some of the things that we're doing, you know, both advertise, but just, you know, let people know about, you know, things we're trying to do to improve diversity, to improve lives for, you know, trainees and faculty, you know, how I'm trying to, you know, in some way change academia, which definitely needs to change and is slow to change, but how we're kind of doing that. But here, you know, one of the things we decided to do when I first joined the department is to create a new independent fellows program, one where a senior grad student can actually skip a postdoc and go straight to a semi-independent position where they're placed in a host lab that acts more like a collaborator. But the department pays their salary, which is much higher than a postdoc, and they also get a research budget. And it is expected that they kind of develop their independent program as best they can. And so, you know, here at Twitter, in this particular tweet, I just announced this program. You know, if you're interested to kind of go straight into an independent position and not want to bother with a postdoc, here's this position here. Oftentimes you can kind of put a picture, or I like to use the GIFs a lot, GIFs, whatever you want to call them. So these are just little, you know, fragment of a movie or something that's kind of a video, and to kind of just emphasize and get people's attention. And so, you know, when I do things like this, I think the responses are usually good. And Twitter, I like it a lot because, you know, you can see down here that, you know, okay, it got retweeted 57 times and quote tweeted as well. So people are spreading it a little bit, and a lot of people, you know, 100 people liked it. That's pretty good. So you might think, oh, you know, 100 people, 150 people, whatever, that interacted with your tweet, that's great. But that's just the people who kind of bothered to do something. You can actually look at the tweet analytics of any tweet that you put out and really see how many people were kind of viewing it, had, you know, deeper engagements, or saw this on Twitter. And so from what I've heard, it's maybe changed a little bit now, but, you know, every kind of 6 or 7 seconds, there's like a new tweet easily. And within like minutes, thousands of people could be seeing it. And so there really is no other media, I think, that will give you that type of publicity, that type of PR, and that type of widespread engagement in such a short amount of time. And so for this particular tweet, while there was, you know, several people that took the time to really, you know, either like it or retweet it, all of those type of things, this was seen by a lot of people. And this is, you know, and so the people read this and saw it. And then, of course, you know, there's different levels of kind of engagement and things like that it keeps track of. And so Twitter is a serious platform to really get news out. And that's something I didn't quite appreciate until I started really tweeting, and then started traveling and meeting people. And people are like, oh, yeah, I saw your tweet on this, or I follow you, or I've seen your tweets. Thank you so much for these type of things. So that the engagement is just off the wall. There's, you know, so many people on Twitter, especially even science Twitter. And so I've announced a lot of other things as well, you know, both scientific and non. And so we had like a new mass spec center that was created in my institution. I had played a role in that. So kind of just posted some pictures of the new floor space, which was kind of cool. Got a lot of interest there, as well as, you know, I'm in a department head. So we have a lot of faculty searches and things going on. And so, you know, definitely like to announce all the different programs and recruitments that we're having in the department, try to be a little bit more transparent about what we're doing as well. Again, you know, put a picture or some kind of gift on that. And it's funny because sometimes I'll tweet and, you know, I'll get responses from people in my own like department that are kind of very interested that, you know, they're very like, I guess, engaged as well. And so it kind of brings communities together, even ones that are like, you know, very local. So very interested in kind of, you know, using Twitter as a good platform to really engage with people, both people here that I see every day, but also, you know, obviously people that are out in the world that I can't meet. Twitter is really great for seeking help or advice. And so there's been so many different times that I've posted like, hey, does anybody, you know, have any experience with this? Or does anybody use that? Or, and other people as well. And so here was a question that someone had and just asked like, hey, what are people using for DIA analysis these days? I guess, you know, they hadn't really done a whole lot of DIA. And so they were trying to figure out what are the best tools for, you know, the data independent acquisition data. And so got a lot of responses. I responded to this, we've used a lot of things, Spectronaut and other things, but lately we've been kind of testing out Diane. So this is a great way to, get like almost immediate response. I almost want to say it's like a very, in a way, it's kind of a lazy way to do it, right? I mean, you want to look something up, in the old days, you used to just look things up. Oh, I need to go look PubMed, or I need to pull up journals. I need to ask people for advice. And those are all still really good. But now, with the power of how fast, word gets around on Twitter, you have a question, you put it out there, like in a few seconds or minutes, you're going to get answers like right away. And even help that's more practical help, not just information, but here's a tweet from someone that said, hey, UPenn, Princeton friends, anybody have an antibody for flow? I need 3 microliters this Sunday. And I guess they had ordered it, but it's back ordered. And then someone wrote like, oh yeah, we have it, let us know if you need it. And a bunch of other people wrote as well. So here is like a dire situation where like they needed a certain reagent. And in the last, couple of years with the pandemic and supply chain issues, this has been a real problem. You run out of something and sometimes things are back ordered, but here you go on Twitter, putting it out there, hey, I need help. And, you get an overwhelming response of people saying, yeah, we got this. And just give me your FedEx number, we'll ship it to you. Additionally, you just never know what will happen on Twitter in good ways. And so, during the pandemic, I decided that, it's probably a little bit after the pandemic, or I don't know, maybe we're still in the pandemic. But I kind of decided when I took over this position that I was going to be very kind of open and transparent about things we were doing. Oftentimes, especially in academia, it's not really clear how things work. How do you apply to a faculty job search? What should be in the application? What do search committees look for? What is the interview process like? All these type of things. And so last year when we had an open search, at the beginning of that search, I just started tweeting about just updates about that search. And I didn't think much about it at first. I just thought, hey, I'm just going to make these tweets and put it out there just so people kind of know what we're doing. But the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. And so I just put that, hey, we have a junior faculty search committee that, we've had 108 applications and we're looking at the top 14 for the first round interviews, and we're going to bring in 6 for in-person interviews. And I think this is like the first tweet I put of many of like, updates about our junior faculty search. And the responses were like pretty incredible. I didn't really think too much about it, but then people started writing things like, well, okay, here's like a valuable peek behind the curtain for those on the academic job market or thinking about applying in the future. And then other people wrote like, thank you for your transparency about selection process. This should be shown to any, people that are, looking to get into the academic pipeline. We need more transparency. Good to see that there's feedback to applicants because, I wrote like a lot. This is just the first tweet of many, even just in this thread. This is the first tweet of many. So I just kind of wrote things that I thought were important, but I didn't realize that, a lot of people don't know about these processes. I thought it was just me. Like when I went through the junior search kind of, academic job market, I really didn't know a lot about it. Twitter was around, but I wasn't using it and it wasn't as strong as it is now. And so I just felt, that during that process, when I went through it, it was difficult. I didn't really know what to expect. A lot of people didn't take the time to talk to me about it either. And so it was very, very surprising and challenging, going through this and not knowing what to expect. So I figured, I would let people know what we're doing. And the response was like, oh my gosh, finally somebody is actually letting us know, what to really expect during this whole process. So I thought that was kind of really interesting. And, I'm glad that I could also be very helpful to people as well and encouraging and answer questions. And so you also don't know what to expect because there could be some crazy things that happen on Twitter. And so during, this was really during the pandemic in 2020, my institution decided to not have any faculty recruitments. for the rest of that year because they were worried about the financial repercussions of the pandemic. But we were asked that if there was anybody that was really a strong candidate that you found somehow, you couldn't have an open search and you couldn't advertise it really like a normal advertisement. But if you found anybody that was really good, you know, there might be a way to make an offer if everybody thought this person was a superstar. And so I just thought, well, you know, how do you advertise something without advertising it, right? Like we couldn't as the department make a real advertisement. And so I just went on Twitter and I said, hey, look, if anybody's on the job market, you know, if you're interested in my department, let me know. Maybe there's some way we can have you give a talk or whatever. And I just put this little message out there. And I got, you know, I put a message out here. And then basically that's all I said is, hey, if you're on the job market and you want to give a talk at my university, let me know, because maybe there might be a pathway to a position. But there was, you know, that's all I really wrote. And I had several people reach out to me. One of these was Cornelius Chabazui. And you put that like, yeah, you know, I was thinking about my old institution, UPenn. You know, I didn't see there was a listing, but I'm interested. And I just told them that there's no really listing, but, you know, let me know if you're interested and maybe we can get you a talk. And we got him a talk. And there we got a few other people, just some talks, you know, Zoom talks and stuff like that. But it really progressed with him. Everybody thought he was great. And then, you know, several months later, he joined my former institution before I'd left to go to WashU. So I've been here about a year and a half. And so just from a tweet saying, hey, if anybody is out there on the job market and is interested in my institution, maybe there might be a way to position, although there's nothing really posted. Maybe we might be able to do something. And it went from there all the way to this guy being recruited to my former department. So this was really kind of super unexpected and just a great way for us to stay connected and continue to recruiting when we couldn't really formally recruit. You know, it's really okay to show some emotion as well. Sometimes I get really upset about some things, and I you know, be careful what you tweet, but at the end of the day, you know, it's good to show people what you're passionate about. And so I often post about like how underrepresented minorities and women have, you know, a lot of challenges in academia. And, you know, I don't hold back a lot on some things I say here. This is our national funding agency, which I was really kind of upset because, you know, they haven't been working hard enough, in my opinion, to improve things for minorities and women as well. And other people kind of write some things as well. Here, you know, this one person writes that he's thinking of starting a thread to shame scientists who don't share their reagents. I guess he was mad that, you know, try to get some reagents and you know, just venting about it. And then, you know, of course I like to joke around on Twitter. So I put like, do it. Yeah, start a thread shaming scientists, but he didn't, you know. Definitely be careful what you post though, because, you know, this stuff is out there. And even if you delete your tweets, someone might take a screenshot and you never know what happens. And so here's a tweet from this person that said, got a letter from her department about a potential person of color, a woman candidate, declining an offer because of what happened with Hannah Jones. And Hannah Jones was a faculty member who was recruited to the University of North Carolina, but because of her involvement in a racial project, so she's more of a social scientist, she was declined the offer because they found her to be too controversial. And so because of that, it affected actually the recruitment of, you know, a completely different department, a chem department, because this person that wrote that was being recruited saw what was happening to this other person, another African-American woman of color. And somehow the chem department chair posted this letter or emailed it to everybody in the department, I think by accident. And so then somebody posted it on Twitter. And so that's the things you have to be careful about what you kind of post on Twitter, because this got the attention of the news. And so this was in the United States, like a very kind of high profile case of, you know, bringing to light things in academia that were, you know, obviously, you know, not right. But ultimately, it just happened from, you know, one person kind of posting this letter that the chair wrote and probably sent to people by accident. Twitter is great for posting preprints as well. And, your published work. So this is great for those types of announcements. So we often use Twitter to put our latest publications. This is a preprint, and usually with Twitter, you get a lot of really great reaction to your preprint, but that doesn't always last. Once you actually submit it, then you get the actual reviews back. It could be quite different, but it is nice to get some engagement on Twitter about some of your work. And so, showed you a few examples of how I use Twitter for announcements, for, getting information out, putting papers out there. And so I think for myself, I've kind of made a few kind of do's and don'ts, and sometimes I break them for sure, but I try to stick with these. So definitely try to be positive and excited, and use kind of proper language and wording, especially if you're talking about science. I try to tweet maybe once a day, once every other day. I think that gets, people engaged and looking at your profiles and looking at your, maybe they they notice one tweet that you looked at, but then they'll go back through some of your older tweets and read those as well. So you have to kind of be active to be able to be engaged and build, followers and networks on Twitter. Definitely put your pubs and links, post things you're passionate about. Just be careful what you tweet. Whatever you put out there, it's out there and it will be remembered. And so there's definitely been a tweet or two that I've put out there that I kind of wish I didn't. But usually I try to think a lot more before and cool down before I tweet or respond to tweets. I try to use Twitter to really encourage and support others, especially kind of the younger scientists. This is support that, I feel I didn't really have as a younger scientist as well. And so, you could be a mentor to someone, through any means. And even if you're not like the direct supervisor, you can still provide encouragement and support. And you might think like, well, I'm not a professor, I'm not, a PI somewhere. How am I going to encourage and support others? But there's always someone at a lower level than you, right? If you're a grad student, there's undergrads that are looking towards you. If you're a postdoc, there's grad students that are looking up at you and seeing what you're doing and wanting to achieve what you've achieved. So there's always someone that you can mentor and kind of encourage and support. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people, I get very upset on Twitter, and I just try to have fun, try not to take everything so serious. Most of what I post is just, lighthearted or, informational or very supportive. Yeah, be very careful. There's a lot of trolls on Twitter that are trying to, get a rise out of you and get a negative response out of you. So try to be calm in your responses. And if there's someone that you don't really know, you could post that you're, have a difference of opinion to them, but don't get in big arguments with people, especially people that you don't know. Be careful what you post. Whatever you post, like I said, is there. So, pictures, other things that you feel you probably shouldn't post, don't do it, or confidential details, things like that. Like I said, just be careful that, I try to, if there's something that really kind of gets me upset, I try not to post right away. I will, wait several hours or a day before posting, so I don't just post something that's emotional or something that will get me in trouble. And, I really try to stay positive. So I really, unless someone is really attacking someone or going after like a trainee or something like that, I've never tried to, say anything to someone negative. And so, just kind of use it and be professional, really. And so the best ways to get the most out of social media is really to build a strong targeted profile, let people know who you are. Sometimes, I'll see people that are liking my tweets, and when I look at their profiles, it just barely has some weird handle names that you can't tell who it is. You can't, there's no picture, or it has like a cartoon or something, and you don't know who they are. I mean, if you're going to use things, I think you should really build a good profile so people know who you are and can put a face to the name and someday, maybe even meet you. And, I try to engage in more meaningful conversations. I do mess around sometimes on Twitter for sure, but, most of the time I try to put out good information. I try to, be supportive. I try to talk about science and things that will change academia and life. And so, I do try to engage more in good conversations. Like I said, Twitter won't work well if you tweet once and then tweet, 5 months later. And so I think for social media, you need some kind of engagement that's routine. For the different platforms I talked about, there's different levels of engagement. I think for LinkedIn and Twitter, you have to be a little bit more active if you're going to get the most out of it. And then just, can't reiterate enough to think before you post something. And so the last thing I just wanted to say, especially for all of us who are still in academia, whether you're students, postdocs, faculty, is that most institutions have some type of guidance and official stances on social media uses, especially if you're going to, like, even in your profile say, hey, I am a faculty member at Washington University. Well, you just kind of put Washington University on the spotlight. And so I would just say, this is specific for my university, just to kind of show you. But I would check your current institution, your current company, their social media policy, because these days it's pretty likely that they have something in writing, and you should really be conscious of that, because you don't want to get in trouble with your institution for saying something that they would not really want you to say, especially if you're commenting on something within the institution. And so you have to at least be aware of the policies of your own institution. Our institution is really great because they have all kinds of things on like best practices for Twitter and other social media. So if you kind of want to see that, you can check it out. But I think you should look at your own institution, because they'll have, different things. I just kind of skip through some of these, but some of these could even be just like, what is the right logos to use and things like that. And so Washington University is very particular. I think other universities are too. So I would really kind of check those out, because there's all kinds of ways they would want, the branding of the university, if you're using it for websites or things like that, or in social media to be. And so I think I'm going to kind of stop here, and I think we have a few minutes for questions. So thanks everybody for listening. Hope it was helpful and you learned a little bit. Thanks. And
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was going to say also that, I'll make these slides available. I'll send them to you, Luisa. So if anybody wants them, you can distribute them.
Perfect. Thank you very much. It was very nice and very informative talk. Thank you very much. And we have also a few questions. So I think the first question was about Twitter and about the big discussion that Mastodon will replace Twitter because of Elon Musk. What do you think about that?
Yeah. So, definitely, there's a lot of talk over the last few months, because I kind of mentioned it once Elon Musk kind of took over Twitter. I personally haven't seen a huge difference in my Twitter feed and what I'm seeing for news and things like that, because I'm very careful about who I follow. I really only follow scientists and things like that, but a lot of other people have complained that they're seeing a lot of things that are more political or other news that they're not really interested in, and so they're very upset that Elon Musk is kind of changing Twitter to some extent. I haven't seen that really, but I don't doubt that other people have. So there's been an exodus a little bit of people in science, or taking a break, or even straight out leaving Twitter and going to other platforms. So one of these other platforms is Mastodon. And so I have not personally made the jump to using Mastodon. I just feel really strongly about just running from things. And so, if all the scientists leave Twitter, then who's going to be left to fight disinformation? And who's going to be left to support the younger students who are there? How can I, as a potential leader in the field, or a PI, a more senior person, how can I just leave and then leave everybody else who's younger to, potentially suffer on Twitter and not have anybody there to help? And so I've stayed on Twitter. I'm not leaving. We'll see if it shuts down, it shuts down or whatever. So I haven't even looked at Mastodon yet, but I know a lot of people are. I think it's getting better and better from what I've heard. It's a little bit different to use than Twitter. You have to like pick certain servers and kind of, it's a little bit harder to engage, or you have to find people to engage. I've heard there's a lot of pushback from like the original Mastodon users that now they're seeing an influx of Twitter people. So there's a little bit, I've heard from some team aspect people, there's a little bit of hostility as well towards new users on Mastodon. Maybe that will all chill out and relax in a little bit, but I haven't gone on. I think it's good though for people to have different platforms. And so there might be something out of Mastodon that you might find is a little bit better for you than other platforms. And that's totally okay.
Okay, thank you. Then maybe something that is related also to Twitter, because it is more often used for blaming and hate speech. What do you think? How does that affect the science people, and how can we prevent that?
Yeah, no, so I mean, yeah, I've kind of emphasized a lot to be careful. You don't want to get involved in some of those things, or inadvertently start like negative conversations and stuff. Yeah, there is a lot of that for sure, and even from scientists. And I'll definitely step in when I think like scientists are unfairly blaming people or going after people. Try to tell people to kind of relax or think about different. And so, yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of, it's not like a lot you can do about it, right? Because people are going to do what they want to do. Whatever they want to do on Twitter, whatever they want to do on Facebook or any of these other social media platforms, they're going to do it. So you have a choice to either ignore or engage, and engage to try to correct information, engage to try to diffuse situations, engage to try to defend people. And I definitely do when I believe people have kind of crossed the line and it's something that I know about. I don't want to just jump into any conversation about something that I don't really know about. So you have the choice to kind of do that, and you just have to kind of feel with your conscience what's the best way to go for you personally.
Yeah, thank you. Would you recommend putting your scientific social media channel into the CV?
Well, yeah, I have seen it. I definitely have seen it. A lot of people are making their own websites. So a lot of individuals are making their own websites, and they will clearly have links to their websites. They will have links to their Twitter handles or Google Scholar pages, things like that. I think it could be useful. Obviously this gets back to be careful what you post, right? Because it's very easy for someone to search on the internet and say, oh, let me see if this person is on Twitter. Let me see if this person's on whatever. And so, yeah, if you're posting things that are, probably things you wouldn't want a potential job, recruiter to know about, then, I'd probably be very careful. But if, you have a lot of good scientific interactions, you have, good networks, there's nothing that you wouldn't want to share with people. I don't see any problem putting it on your CV. Yeah.
Related to that, do you search for the social media account actively if you get an application for a job in your lab?
I typically don't. Normally, normally I really kind of don't look for that type of stuff. Or when I'm hiring people into the department, like for faculty positions, I don't. A lot of people will tell me they follow me. So a lot of people will say like, oh yeah, I follow you and things. But I typically don't. I guess I just don't. I kind of respect that privacy, I think people, but that's just me. Other people will definitely like internet stalk you and figure out all the things you're doing. But I think everybody kind of deserves a platform to say what they want to say, and engage with the communities they want to engage. So I don't.
Okay, and maybe the last questions, last question, how can we use social media to provide information or our science and research to not science or research people?
Yeah, that is also a very a very good thing for sure. Oftentimes, I'll tweet something about some of the science we're doing or retweet something, and you will see non-scientists responding and asking some questions about it. And so, yeah, no, this is, Twitter is a very strong platform for that as well. And I do think we have a kind of a social responsibility, to be able to talk about science in a non-scientific way to people. And so I don't do it enough, but there's definitely some very, very good scientists that spend a lot of time, trying to, talk about how vaccines work, or talk about other things, talk about climate change, talk about all the other things, and engage non-scientists. And so, yeah, that is absolutely one way you can use Twitter. I haven't quite used it for that manner. I've kind of just stayed within kind of the science realm and science networks. But yeah, a lot of people do that, and it is a great thing to do, I think.
And maybe the last one. So what do you think about having someone for publishing or to handle your social media account? Because this is very popular in the industry. How do you see that for the academia?
I mean, it definitely happens at more of like a company or department or institution level. You'll have somebody handling like, some of the media. I'm sure there's one or two people that kind of handle the media here for your YPIC group as well. So I think that's kind of fine, when you're kind of representing like a group or a larger kind of entity. Obviously not everybody can get access to and tweet. You probably don't want that either. You want, someone to do that for you. In places and organizations where I've had that, there's always been very clear guidelines to help people on like, what are the best kind of practices. So for like, the Human Proteome Organization, there are very, very detailed, I was on the social media committee, and we made very, very detailed instructions on, how to use, whoever, it's not going to always be the same person that is tweeting for years and years and years to come. And so we laid out some very, explicit guidelines on how to use Twitter, if you're representing HUPO, for people that are coming in the future to take over. So I think that's fine. I guess I hadn't heard of any individual having their, someone kind of control their Twitter accounts or be like a manager. I guess it's definitely possible to have someone be more of a PR person for you. I think they'll be a little bit lost. You won't have those personal kind of interactions, obviously, with people if you have someone. But I mean, you can still get information out that way. You can still kind of build some networks. I just don't think you're going to get as much out of it if you're not personally kind of involved in some level. But if you're someone that's really too busy or something, yeah, maybe that can at least work to have a social media presence.
Okay, some more questions are coming in. So do you use any planning tools for your social media or for cross-posting?
No, because it's really just Twitter that I'm on. But other people definitely do. Yeah, I've heard of other people using, oh gosh, there are some tools to do kind of cross-posting. Worst comes to worst, they're posting the same things in the different platforms. The problem is with that is that, Twitter, they all have like different length of like tweets or information you can post, right? So it's a little bit difficult to like create one post that will be applicable across all the different platforms, especially if you want to put a lot of information, because I think Twitter, you only have whatever 280 characters or something like that. So it's a little bit harder if your post is meant for LinkedIn, where there's like not as much, or there's a little bit less restrictions on what you can post versus, something else, or WeChat, which is being used a lot in like China. You can post like essays, you can post really long posts, but in Twitter it's different. So I think it just probably makes, there's some tools to do it, and there's probably some ways to do it, but it requires a little bit more thinking, because it's hard to just post the same thing across, unless you're just posting a link and like very little information or text.
Yeah, thank you. And one last question now. What about the blogs of scientists on YouTube? What do you think about them?
Yeah, I didn't talk about YouTube or, Instagram or anything else. There's some great things on there as well. And so a lot of people on Twitter will post links to YouTube or to other platforms. And that's great. That's fantastic. Yeah, I think some things are better said. I mean, most things are better said, entirely in videos rather than 280 characters. So I think if there is opportunities, and if you have the time to like post videos and things like that, those always end up doing very, very well. Those will get retweeted a lot on Twitter, those type of posts. And so, yeah, the people that have the time, it's really great to do that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I hope that was all. Otherwise, I think the people can also send you some questions on Twitter.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Yeah. Then thank you all for coming here, and I hope you all enjoyed the talk from Ben. And maybe we can give him a small applause for the end.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have fun out there and hope to run into you somewhere.
Thank you.